Welcome to the June 3rd Planning Commission meeting. All members are present. In addition, let the record reflect, oh, no. We can just line that out. Everybody is present. Would they all like to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Per the city's meeting rules and procedures, public comments are generally limited to 5 minutes or less time if a large number of speakers is anticipated or if approved by the chair. We're doing 5 minutes tonight. Speakers desiring answers to questions should direct them to the Planning Commission, and if relevant, the commission may direct them to staff. Speakers can also follow up directly with staff during regular city business hours. Please file a speaker's card with the administrative secretary on the form provided at the back of the chambers. During this portion of the meeting, those in the council chambers are permitted to speak on items that are not on the agenda. Public comments for scheduled agenda items should wait until that time. April?
We have a handful of cards. Our first speaker is Daniel Duran.
Okay. No, I didn't put my last name. You threw me off.
No.
I'm sorry. Oh. Sorry. Sorry. No. That's all right. I almost wore my red shirt too. Oh, see?
We'll do that next.
No, we do that here.
Oh, wow. Good evening. My name is Daniel Duran. I'm the president of the Brentwood Memorial Veterans Building Committee. I'm the commander of American Legion Post 202. But this evening, I'm up here speaking to you as a resident of Brentwood. I went to high school 1 year in the American Legion building. So I've been here for a while, okay? I want to begin by sincerely thanking you for your unanimous decision to deny the permit for the Fire Station 94 proposed downtown location. I understand the weight of these decisions, especially when they're wrapped in intense political pressure. Your courage and integrity in upholding the downtown specific plan reflects the deep respect for both the process and the people of Brentwood. You've shown that principled local governance looks like. Unfortunately, not everyone has shown the same respect. Supervisor Diane Burgess recently published an op-ed in the press stating, and I quote, "Without building more fire stations, the problem will only get worse. Contact the city council today with a clear message, no more delays." She also implied that your decision rooted in your charge to uphold the downtown specific plan somehow endangered lives. This is fear-mongering, plain and simple. It's a troubled tactic to use public safety to pressure the city into abandoning its standards and giving in to poorly planned, ill-fitting project. Let's be very clear. Brentwood has had only one fire station for the better part of a decade, not because of you, but because of concerned residents asking for better planning, but because of the chronic mismanagement by the fire district itself. Their delays, missed opportunities like abandoning the Cyan Creek site originally proposed in 2005 are theirs alone. And now they come to you not with a plan that fits the community, but with the demands that ignore your design guidelines, your commission's authority, and the very intent of Brentwood carefully crafted downtown plan. This is our city. And yet the fire district backed by the county seems to content to come into our house, ignore all rules, and insist on doing things their way. That's not collaboration, it's arrogance. You didn't yield to that. You stood for thoughtful planning, for the future of Brentwood, and for the integrity of the planning process. Thank you for setting the standard and for reminding everyone that Brentwood's voice matters. Please continue to hold the line. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Ted and Portillo.
It's going to be hard to follow. This is our first time here. So we actually started developing a house that burnt down here in Brentwood on Nancy Street behind Taco Bell. I'm a flipper, and my brother-in-law is a contractor by trade, and we got ourselves into a little bit of a mess with the planning department, some history with that particular neighborhood. So it turns out that the house burnt down. We rebuilt it. The existing structures were developed when that area still belonged to the county, and it was developed for the farm workers that were in the area. So everything was like really low budget, the way it was laid out, the carports, no structures to, kind of protect people from the elements on the outside. And then from what I understand, the city of Brentwood annexed that neighborhood. And then when they annexed it, they overlaid a zoning of R3 on top of that. Well, when they rezoned it, the existing structures were already non-compliant according to the zoning regulations. So what they did is they pretty much made some of the existing structures legal non-conforming, and that was, how they dealt with that situation. Over the years, the community that has, moved in and lives there, they're working class and they have the means now to improve on the houses. So everybody has tried to do something to improve, the structure and they have. And so now maybe I haven't taken account of the entire neighborhood, but I would say maybe 70% of the existing homes in that area, there's 60 homes there in total. And about maybe 70% of those have modified, their structures on the outside, just to expand them and to give them more protection. When we started developing that project, we wanted to follow suit and kind of make it look a little bit better and expand from a one carport to a two carport. And we also did some modifications to the interior of the house just to make it better. I'm just saying that just to kind of let you guys know what our intent was when we were trying to build the structure. Well, it turns out that we got to the point where we needed to get our final approval, and the structure was now non-conforming. That's where we hit code enforcement, and then we started talking to Eric over here about it, and some of the people in the planning department. So what we're trying to do now, we're trying to come up with a solution that's going to benefit everybody in the neighborhood. And so, we tried, we had some discussions around doing a variance, and after getting some feedback from Eric and considering the situation, we pretty much determined that wasn't an option. So really what we're trying to do here to see is, we could, get that area rezoned so that everybody in that area is allowed to keep their existing structures, so everybody benefits from that. We tried to go to some of the members or the homeowners that live in the area to see if they want to participate. A lot of them were, kind of hesitant because they, kind of fear what's going to happen with the city coming and looking at their structures. So we're actually willing to take the hit on the application. The application, from what I understand, is about $10,000 to have it, considered to get rezoned. But really, the purpose of being here today is just to figure out or to get some feedback. And from what I understand, maybe you guys do have feedback or you provide that through the staff. But we really wanted to have a sense of what you guys consider about rezoning that area. So we talked to Eric. Eric seemed to be okay with it, and we're presenting it to you guys. Before we kind of move along and spend that money, we just kind of want to know where we stand. So, like I said, this is our first time here. We don't know the protocol or how this works, but really that's the answer that we're looking for.
Thank you.
And we have some pictures. I don't know if you guys have time to look at some pictures.
What I want to tell you first off is that rezoning is the one thing that we can't do. The city council retains the authority to do a rezone. Do you know who your council member is?
Like I said, this is the first step, and so we're going to attend the meeting, I guess, next week.
Yeah. Do you know what district you live in?
This is Nancy, right behind Taco Bell, Nancy Street in Brentwood.
That's probably District 2. So your council member would be most likely Pat Nisha Pearson.
Okay.
But I would encourage you, there's a city council meeting next week on the same day in this very chamber. I'd encourage you to talk to them. And if you need to have some one-on-one time, reach out. Probably the best one would be the council member that's for your district.
Okay.
We can't, I hate to send you away without much more information than that, but rezoning is just something that we're not able to do in this body.
Chair Floor.
Hold on just a second.
Hi, Chair Floor. If that's okay, I might bring it, just because public comment isn't a time for back and forth, but I think that they have their information and they can head to their council member, but we don't want to talk about an item that's not on our agenda tonight.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that is very true, but I was kind of done making my comment anyway. I was just going to encourage you to follow up with the city council.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ian?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for letting me speak today, especially the City Council staff and the Planning Commission. I have a suggestion that will help improve city safety and increase the city's revenue. Have you ever noticed a person run a red light? If you've ever been in a car, you probably have. Sadly, this problem is abundant everywhere, and the most ludicrous thing about it is that most of the people who commit this safety violation don't even get caught, nor punished. First, I propose that we make more signs alerting the citizens that it is against the law to run a red light, and if caught, they will receive a hefty fine. Next, this will make less people even consider running a red light in the first place. Then, we should incorporate more cameras and speed trackers, especially to major roads or intersections that don't already have them integrated. The cost of purchasing and installing these cameras cost about $10,000 and take a few $1,000s more for maintenance, but they will generate multiple $1,000s a day and will soon pay off for itself and more. Also, it will remove more unsafe drivers off the road with the DMV's point system. That's all, and I would like to once again thank the City Council staff and the Planning Commission for letting me speak. Have a great rest of your day.
Paul Radliff?
Good evening, Planning Commission, city staff. I want to take a minute and thank you for standing firm in your decision to deny the fire department its approval to move forward on Fire Station 94. In all the years I've been paying attention to politics, and it's a lot, I have never seen as much gaslighting, fear-mongering, dishonesty, and outright bullying as I've seen being displayed by Supervisor Burgess in the fire department. It reminds me of the politics you see during a presidential campaign, ugly, deceitful, and demeaning. I understand the demonization of the veterans, our supporters, and the local small businesses in the area, as Diane Burgess has clearly shown over the last few years that we are secondary to her having her legacy monument built in downtown. And let's be clear, this isn't just an issue of veterans, but an issue for the city of Brentwood's downtown specific plan, and just as important that the downtown area has outgrown the viability of a station downtown. What clearly surprises me, however, is her blatant attack on the Planning Commission members' character and integrity. Her attack on your integrity in doing your job you were asked to do. Her using tragedies such as car fires and emergency issues lately to justify her claims of your incompetence. I say all this because I have seldom ever seen a commissioner board stand up in the face of such negative and political attack as you have. You have shown a strength of character and integrity that I seldom find anywhere except in military and law enforcement personnel. So on behalf of the veterans that I call my family, the people of Brentwood, and the veterans that use our hall as a second home and a place to find peace when the nightmares of their combat experience threaten to overwhelm them, I say thank you. Thank you for supporting your veterans, your neighbors, your local businesses. You have our back and we have yours. Thank you very much.
Mike Miakovich?
Good evening, council members of the planning commissioners. My name is Mike Miakovich. I'm the Senior Vice Commander of VFW Post 10789. I want to take a moment to express my sincere gratitude for your unanimous 4-0 vote to deny the proposed Fire Station 94 project. Your decisions reflect exactly what strong, principled leadership looks like. Leadership that is rooted in integrity, diligence, and commitment to the Brentwood specific plan, which you were appointed to uphold. By following the guidelines of the plan, you demonstrated a deep understanding of your role, not just as commissioners, but as stewards of Brentwood's future. It is clear that each of you did your homework. You listened, you asked thoughtful questions, and you weighed in facts carefully before coming to a decision. That kind of preparation and transparency is what builds trust in local government, and it's exactly what the community expects and deserves. It is deeply disappointing and frankly appalling that certain officials, including a county supervisor and the fire district, have chosen to publicly criticize and berate you for you filling your duty. You were not elected to rubber stamp flawed proposals. You are appointed to evaluate projects through the lens of the Brentwood values, planning documents, and long vision, and that's precisely what you did. Your vote wasn't just a no to the project. It was a yes to the thoughtful growth, a yes to community-driven planning, a yes to preserving the integrity of the city's future. You showed the kind of courage that often goes unrecognized in public service. Please know that your work has not gone unnoticed. Many in the community stand with you and thank you for your time, your integrity, and your unwavering commitment to do what's right. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Travis Martin.
Place to put my belly. Good evening, commissioners, city employees. I want to take a moment to thank each of you for your service and your integrity. You're going to hear that as a theme, if you haven't already, through our comments this evening. Your unanimous vote to deny the permit for the proposed downtown fire station was not just a decision about architectural compatibility or zoning compliance. It was a stand for the principle that everyone, including the county and the fire district, must follow the rules. To have approved that permit would have sent a dangerous message that if you invoke public safety or carry the weight of the county seal, that the rules no longer apply to you. That Brentwood's downtown specific plan, carefully crafted as it was, publicly vetted and consistently applied, can be tossed aside for political convenience. That's not good governance. Let me be honest, the fire district came into this process expecting a rubber stamp. They're not used to being questioned. They're not used to being held accountable, and they expect their size, their authority, and their appeal to fear, lives are at stake, to override your standards, your processes, and quite frankly, your backbone. But you did not bend, and for that, I applaud each of you. The fire district's entire approach has resembled the classic 800-pound gorilla, pushing its weight around, expecting everyone to get out of the way. But that's not why we have planning commissions. That's not why we elect city officials. We put you in these positions to make sure that unelected bureaucracies don't run the show unchecked, that you are the line between thoughtful planning and administrative overreach. And last month, you held that line with clarity and courage. This kind of public service matters. It matters not just to those who follow the issues closely, but to every resident who cares about fairness, local control, long-term and the long-term integrity of our community. The trust that we place in our system rests at the decisions you make. So thank you. Thank you for showing the community and the fire district that Brentwood will not be bullied. Thank you for upholding the standards we've all agreed to. And thank you for reminding us that accountability still exists, even when it's uncomfortable. You've done the right thing. You've stood firm. The community is behind you. So to that, I say thank you and wish you all well.
Sahil Narula.
Hello, Planning Commission staff and Planning Commission members. Thank you for permitting me to speak about our General Plan Land Use Map today. The General Plan Land Use Map is an official city document / map that displays sections of land and that would be allocated in a certain way for development, i.e. residential high density, professional office, etc. Due to this, the General Plan Land Use Map is what lays the foundation for new zoning rules, codes, guidelines in the city, etc., kind of like that. Now, with that, why has not Brentwood amended or updated its general plan land map in 7 years and updated it in 11? Brentwood has experienced a drastic surge in housing and has had a boom in population since then. Not to mention, Brentwood has gotten a new elementary school and a new traffic pattern since, due to various new facilities being opened up and a new school and a school being halved in terms of population. Not to mention, Brentwood has also attracted a whole new Costco, dozens of new local businesses since then, and has also experienced a colossal surge in residential demand. With the colossal surge in residential demand, Brentwood needs to find a way to sustainably manage growth and make sure the quality of life is preserved. Both of those would require a new general plan land use map to preserve the quality of life, to accommodate for amenities that would need to be moved to the new clusters of population, and to satisfy the various new traffic needs and general needs of the city, like new residential plots needing because way too many people are moving in, or new commercial space because of the amount of demand for businesses. A new general plan land use map, as aforementioned, would allow the city to move the location of land allocated for the purpose of recreation, if not already built nor under construction, to a plot that would match the new clusters of population formed since the last amendment. A new general plan land use map would also allow Brentwood to remove certain plots if not needed, and replace them with plots that are in high demand, such as removing unneeded industrial space and replacing it with residential or commercial space due to the surge in residential demand, coupled with agglomeration economics. Now, with all of these reasons in mind, I believe we should start amending or revamping / updating our general plan land use map to satisfy the needs of Brentwood today and Brentwood tomorrow. Thank you, Planning Commission members, and thank you, Planning Commission staff, and thank you once again. Thank you.
Danny.
No, I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. Okay, well, I'm kind of sort of freestyling this, but I'll start with the easiest. Temper tantrum Tony Orlemans does not trust you. He showed it. The hypocrite who each and every one of you had a simple question asked of him, and I'm going to paraphrase. Would you follow statutes and laws even if they were against your principles? Each one of you said yes, that's why you're there. And I believe you. And last session, you proved it. This hypocrite didn't even allow Dave Sparling an opportunity to apply for this position or interview, whatever you want to call it. Because in Temper Tantrum's mind, he didn't follow the rules. So, and I'm saying this, and I'm, again, freestyling, so my apologies. We have two groups of people. We have the folks that come here on a regular basis with the 8 people watching right now, who may or may not go to Facebook, who may or may not hear what goes on here and at the council meeting. Then you have the Facebook / next door crowd, a much larger, I'll say more opinionated, if not slanted. And my mistake has always been just addressing my rants here. I'm correcting that mistake, Supervisor Burgess. I'm correcting that mistake, CC Fire, failed candidate, president, proxy. I'm going to make sure that everything that is said here and me are going to be available instead of that slanted. I can't call it left or right because it's not a political thing. It's slanted, though, slanted to backroom elites and people who want to climb the political ladder, like Supervisor Diane Burgess and other failed candidates. So, Tony Orlemans, who, and that's why I'm saying it tonight, just in case you didn't know, brings in a weapon at every session. He carries a weapon every time he's here. Now, granted, he has a concealed carry, but he's also the guy 3 years ago that had all the looks of an active shooter. And you guys can go to YouTube and look at that. Lastly, I want to thank Bob Mankin, my new friend. He commented on your decision, and he goes, so if we go with your premise, the premise being that you guys are right, experts can be wrong, then we should instead go with the loudest topic illiterate commentator on Facebook to make our public safety resources placement decision. To which I said, that's all well and good, except that the big but ugly brown brick building was denied because of the design. Not because of vets, not because of different locations, the design. So, I certainly hope, since Temper Tantrum pulled the decision, the right decision out of your hands, and now has put the burden on council, I want council to remember that you're only deciding if your decision was right, and your decision was the design. God bless America.
Dawn Hester.
Chair, Planning Commissioners, I just want to take a few moments, and I'm going to give you back some time. I just wanted to say that it's always important for leaders to do the right thing, the right way, for the right reason, and you displayed that admirably, and for that we're very thankful. And I can see the rest of my time. Thank you.
Dolores Long.
Good evening, commissioners, staff, and public. I want to sincerely thank each of you for your unanimous decision to deny the design review for Fire Station 94. based on the clear failure to meet the requirements of the downtown specific plan. As a former planning commissioner myself, I understand firsthand how difficult these decisions can be, especially when facing intense political pressure. Your commitment to upholding the integrity of Brentwood's planning standards, despite that pressure, is commendable. It is truly disheartening to see that Supervisor Burgess has chosen to make disparaging remarks about this commissioner's work. Such comments only highlight the political strain you are under, and yet you all remain steadfast in your responsibility to the people of Brentwood. Thank you for standing firm, not for the politics, but for the process, for protecting the character of our downtown, and for reminding us that Brentwood's future should be planned by Brentwood, not dictated by county bureaucracy. With gratitude, thank you so much.
At this time, Chair, we have no other speaker cards.
Thank you, April. And thank you, everybody, for commenting tonight. Much appreciated. Our next item is the consent calendar. There's one set of minutes for the regular meeting of May 6, 2025. Is there any discussion, or do I have a motion?
I make a motion to accept.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Moving on. We're moving on to item E1, a focus zoning code update related to regulations for self-storage and drive-through facilities. Jennifer?
Thank you, Chair and members of the Commission. We are here before you tonight to bring forward the next steps of our city's focus zoning code update, which included originally 3 main tasks, including the creation of new objective design standards, zoning code updates required by state law, and specialized focus zoning code updates. As part of the focus zoning code update, the City Council recommended staff work on updates related to 6 items shown here. To date, the city has completed work related to car washes and short-term rentals, which were reviewed and adopted by the City Council in December, and continues to work on regulations related to alcohol sales and service stations, which will be brought forward separately in the future. Tonight, staff will be presenting to you recommendations related to self-storage facilities and drive-through uses. Both of these items were previously presented to LUD as well as the full City Council to receive direction on the proposed amendments that are being brought before you tonight. The first is self-storage facilities. Self-storage facilities are currently listed in 7 zones within the city, with the city currently served by 6 different storage facilities that vary in size, but generally occupy large parcels with multiple single-story structures. Given the scarcity of the remaining vacant commercial land in the city, the majority of council believe that self-storage facilities may not be the highest and best use for the land, and therefore directed staff to draft amendments that would restrict self-storage facilities to only the 6 planned development zones which they are currently allowed. Maintaining this approach to regulation of such facilities would maximize the economic development potential throughout the rest of the city. In addition, it was recommended that the code be updated to clearly define self-storage facilities to create development standards for new and redeveloped facilities within the current zones to ensure compatibility with the surrounding uses. Based on this direction, the proposed amendments before you tonight include new standards related to the minimum lot size, setbacks, height restrictions, architectural standards, and perimeter fencing and screening. In addition, standards related to lighting, security features, and residential managers' units were also included. Specific prohibited uses for storage facilities were also added that include storage of toxic materials, sale or distribution of goods, vehicle repair, and truck rentals. The next area for discussion is drive-through uses. Over the past few years, drive-throughs have become critical for many fast food chains after COVID, as restaurants were required to shut down indoor seating areas. Many companies are now switching to drive-through models because they are more profitable and smaller than sit-down restaurants requiring less staff and maintenance. The anticipated continued demand for drive-through uses on sites on major arterials has the potential for negative effects throughout the city, specifically those located adjacent to single-family residential neighborhoods and along major commercial corridors, which are already impacted by high commuter traffic and peak hours. City Council was presented with options on whether to further regulate drive-through establishments within the city, and based on concerns, the City Council has recommended that the new development standards be implemented for all future drive-through uses to lessen or avoid negative impacts that could result from new and remodeled drive-through establishments. Based on this direction, staff has drafted amendments to include new development standards related to residential setbacks, queuing analysis, separate waiting lanes, vehicle stacking, pedestrian access and circulation, ordering board location, and building design. Based on these recommendations, staff is requesting that the Planning Commission adopt the attached resolution, recommending that the City Council adopt an ordinance to amend the Brentwood Municipal Code to add development standards for the new land use classification definitions for self-storage facilities and drive-through facilities, and update the references in all zones throughout the city related to these uses. And with that, that concludes staff's report. Staff is available, as well as we have our consultant online via Zoom is also available for questions.
Microphone. Does the Planning Commission have any clarifying questions for staff? I think we'll start on Gerald. Commissioner Johnson, questions?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Roberts?
Not at this time.
I kind of went out of order. Commissioner Jones?
Not at this time.
And Vice Chair Brandt?
Nothing now. Thank you.
And no, none for me either. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Jennifer. At this time, the public is permitted to address the Planning Commission. Remarks are limited to 5 minutes per person, except for the applicant, who will have 10 minutes. I don't know that there's an applicant tonight. So we'll just go ahead with the public speakers. April?
This time we have no one in chambers that would like to speak. So we'll go to Zoom. If you'd like to speak on this item, please raise your hand. Chair, we have no hands raised at this time.
All right, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second, anybody?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And is there any discussion by the commission? I guess we'll go this way again. Commissioner Johnson?
Just to say that, the city council has brought these issues before us. That's my understanding, to basically get the planning commission's approval, because that's state law.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have anything else.
Commissioner Jones? You have any discussion items?
Yeah, indulge me a little bit, obviously still being somewhat newer on the commission. Looking at some of the things, particularly limiting self-storage to the existing zones. So is the assumption that the 6 existing facilities meet current and future demand?
That was the thought, that it does currently meet the current demands, and that based on just the overall economic impacts and weighing the benefits, pros and cons of economic impacts of self-storage facilities, that they felt that it does meet the current needs and that would be best limited to their current locations.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And I bring that up, just purely as something to think about, that, if residents or small businesses need storage and there's a lack of supply, could that potentially push them further away? But that clarifies. And then as in terms of the drive-through setback and queuing standards, again, just indulge me, the proposed 100-foot setbacks and queuing standards, what was the modeling or precedent studies that just supported those specific distances?
So originally what we had done was we looked at some of the existing facilities within the city and kind of looked at, for specifics, Wendy's was one of the recent ones that we had processed within the city. It's most likely, I think, our most recent one, and looked how far a noise might travel for things like that. And so there wasn't, it's not an exact science or anything like that on the 100 feet, but we looked at where existing facilities were located, how far they were from single family residential, and what felt too close and what felt appropriate. With this, within the 100 feet, it still has to be bordered by a masonry wall. In the past, we didn't have that requirement. It could be bordered by landscaping or a street or something like that. But in this case, we felt that with the masonry wall to divert sound, that 100 feet would be an appropriate distance.
Okay. And I bring that up just, just because, we get this wrong, it could potentially cause additional neighborhood frustrations or safety issues, things like that. So it's just, I think, just something to consider and think about. Though the other two, I think that was answered in the report, so I'm good. Thank you.
Vice Chair Brand?
Yeah, a couple questions here on my side. The prohibitions that were listed, how do we traditionally enforce those? Is that resident reported or, okay.
Yeah, typically it's resident reported, and one of the reasons for doing these development standards are our existing code, without saying it, doesn't really allow these things. Vehicle repair, it kind of is a common sense thing. Like, you can't have vehicle repair at a storage facility. However, with it not being explicitly written in our code, it potentially could be an enforcement issue. And so things that we have come across in the past in which we've had to enforce, we wanted to make sure we're explicitly included. So there's no questions in the future that these things are definitely prohibited at any future storage facilities.
Understood. And the existing 6 self-storage facilities are all amenable to those prohibitions?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The mixed-use districts are excluded here, and I just wanted to get a sense of which districts, or sorry, which areas, or which zoning in the general plan are specifically called out as mixed use.
So some of the examples of a mixed-use district would be some of the areas within our innovation center. And the reason why we excluded these is because when you live in a mixed-use district, usually you live above a commercial business, and there's less expectation of noise when you have a mixed-use district than it is a single-family residential neighborhood. And so that's why we wanted to explicitly exclude mixed-use districts for reasons like that.
Understood. Okay. For the ordering board, it specifically calls out the drive-through should be oriented and directed to face away from adjacent residential uses. When it says adjacent, I figure we probably have some specificity on that as far as total distance. I know you mentioned the 100-foot. What do we classify as that minimum distance with respect to the term adjacent?
Yeah, so that would fall back more towards the residential setback, where the ordering board shall be located a minimum 100 feet from the boundary of a residential zone unless it has a masonry wall that separates it.
Right, and I think, did I read that right, that it has a minimum 4-foot wall to insulate the drive-through from an adjacent street? Or maybe I read that wrong.
Typically, the masonry wall would be required to be a 6-foot masonry wall.
Oh, 6 foot, sorry. Yeah. And then as far as the comments here about the building design, our favorite word, shall, comes up again here. City of Brentwood Commercial and Industrial Design Guidelines. So are we saying that those guidelines need to be adhered and assessed by Planning Commission and potentially City Council?
Correct. As part of any design review application, that would be something that we would definitely look at.
Okay. And then the rigidity of those design standards with respect to the industrial and commercial standards. I know there's not, compared to the IODS, they're a bit looser. So I don't, when we say adherence, it's I think I use the term assessment because it's not black and white like IODS.
Correct. It is not as objective as the IODS. What our intent here is to say that all new designs shall abide by the design criteria of the commercial and industrial standards, where currently other ones say they should. Our current code says buildings should abide by those, in which you have the discretion at that point to determine which ones are applicable and which ones aren't. So in this case, it gives a little bit more enforcement and a little bit more teeth to the Planning Commission to make the buildings adhere to those guidelines.
Yeah, that's how I read it too. So I was happy to hear that. And that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I guess I'm up. First of all, Jennifer and all the staff, thank you so much for putting this together. A lot of work goes into these things. Appreciate it. I did want to just stick a pin in something. So these usages, drive-throughs, and self-storage facilities are not big job producers. And Brentwood, being, I guess the last number I heard, 88% commuters, we really want to get some jobs in Brentwood. So to me, it makes sense to limit these a little bit. And so I appreciate the effort here to get some definitions on things. I would like a standard that I didn't see in here to keep the queue and order window not in view of the main street, at least, so that when you're driving by the thing, you're not seeing a line of cars as much as possible. I would give you as an example the McDonald's on Balfour over by what used to be Cortona. If you look at it and you're on Balfour, which is the main drag, by the time the drive-through exits kind of there, but that's just like one or two cars at a time. So it's all kind of stacked at the back or the side. And I really like that. So that would be a suggestion that I would make. As far as not being adjacent to any residential, or 100 feet is not very far from residential. 100 feet is not much wider than a lot of lots in Brentwood. I mean, maybe 2 lots wide if some of the smaller lots are like maybe 50 feet, but it's like you could stand, on the sidewalk in your driveway and look down 2 driveways down, and that's the distance. And so to me, it feels a little bit short. And it says no exceptions unless there's a wall. And whatever the distance is, I would say there shouldn't be exceptions at all. So I don't approve of pushing them in any closer than that, even if there is a wall. All right, so moving on to storage, where there'll be some more discussion about walls. It looks, I think that we're not going to be having a lot of multi-storage. Is that correct? It's mostly one story.
All of our current facilities right now, I believe, are 1 story. We've added the guidelines to the building height because we've seen in other communities redevelopment of existing storage facilities where they take down the single-story buildings and build like 3-story huge buildings. So it's more so, since we are limiting it to the current locations, this is more so for future redevelopment of those facilities, but we did want to limit the height. It was discussed at council, and they wanted to make sure that since the majority of our existing facilities are near single-family zones, that they limit it in height in proximity to the adjacent properties.
And that's the 35-foot. And a 35-foot would accommodate maybe 2 stories. I'm just trying to think, because, forgive me, most of the self-storage that I've seen, you just drive up to what looks like a garage door, And I'm just trying to imagine a second floor that you would drive up to,
Yeah.
or you would actually take an elevator or a stairway up to your unit and carry it all down. Interesting. Okay. Thank you. That's a little bit, I was just curious about that. Number 5, let me get back up to it in the, sorry, we've got storage and drive-throughs on the same thing. It makes it a little hard to, where can I find it? Oh, I gotta go up a little bit more. I really should have saved the page for this. Development standards. Number 5, this is on page 8 of 24 in the resolution. It says exterior access for storage units shall be fully screened from the public right away through building design, decorative walls, landscaping, or other screening methods as deemed appropriate by the community development director. The wording "as deemed appropriate" is concerning to me because it's not objective, and objective is on our minds a lot lately, mostly for residential. But I've always been of the opinion that we should be as objective as possible. We are also bound to the commercial and industrial design standards, which would have been nice to have in the packet, but I have it up and you have it up. But we do need screening. I think that walls should have landscaping on the exterior. So in like part 6, landscape and hardscape shall add to the character of the new buildings. Facilitate sustainable water use. Landscape design shall be integrated with the buildings on site, enhance the natural environment of the area. And that does call back to walls as they're defined on page 14, item 7 in the commercial design about no blank walls. They do need landscaping. I don't know if you need to repeat that here. And again, I've seen walls be redefined as fences and even chain link fences, and I would really like to see some language that clarifies that a chain link fence is not a wall. If you take my drift. Sorry, that was probably a little too snarky, but that walls should be masonry walls. And lastly, where we have conditional use of personal storage in PDs particularly, I'm wondering, should there not be limitations on the total square footage or the percentage of square footage, so that we couldn't get some overzealous future commissions or councils establishing some PD as a zone for personal storage and putting just like all personal storage in there. I think there's probably ways that we prevent that now. Is there not, like in a PD, you can't make a PD be all one thing, like it conditionally permits one thing, but there should be variety, right?
In the PDs that they're currently allowed, it has a variety of uses. And so within those, in each of them, I believe, only one of the parcels developed as self-storage. There's nothing that would prohibit like a second property within that PD, or from prohibiting the PD from having more than one self-storage facility. We don't have anything like that, but the permitted uses in all of those are very extensive, and self-storage is only one of those uses within each of those PDs.
Yeah, I guess in my nightmare scenario, somebody goes in and buys all the other businesses, mows them all down, and starts putting up personal storage. So I don't know how likely a scenario that is, but it is something that occurred to me reading it. And I think those were the observations that I had. So I'll go back around just for discussion. Does anybody? Oh, Commissioner Roberts, did you not go? Commissioner Roberts,
Commissioner Roberts is fine.
forgive me.
Commissioner Roberts has, I think that two things I just wanted to comment on Jennifer making that communication real clear to us about the before and after, how things are viewed today. I appreciate that. And Mr. Jeremy, Commissioner Jeremy, kind of hit some pieces that I was prepared to speak to regarding the growth of our community and if that would become an impact down the road. But something like this can come back to the Planning Commission in due time. At some point in time, it can be revisited, correct?
Absolutely. And if there's a parcel of land and a developer that comes in and wants to request a zone change or to modify their uses, they can always do so at their discretion. But yes, it can always be revisited in the future.
That's great. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Forgive me. Does anybody else have any additional?
I just want to make sure I clarify something for my own sake. For the 6, so a couple things. For the 6 storage facility locations, and I read this, but I just want to make sure that I ask it. Does any of these new regulations affect them?
No, right now they are permitted. They are all permitted. They have existing conditional use permits. They are allowed to stay, whether I don't believe in any of these would necessarily make them legal non-conforming. It would be if they were to redevelop that they would then be required to abide by these rules and these design standards.
So if they wanted to add, let's say, I think Acorn is the largest, if I'm not mistaken, they're on 7 acres or something like that. If they wanted to add to their facility, then they would be subject to redo everything. Let's say, as Chairperson Floor said, walls that had plants on them, they would be required to do all of that work if they chose to, let's say, expand.
If they chose to expand, it's not as clear cut. They would be required to come back for design review potentially and modify their conditional use permit, but we would have to look at how much they're expanding. If you're only adding a tiny little small portion of a building, staff in the city council or the planning commission might not have the nexus to require them to develop all of their existing buildings. But we definitely could require them to anything new that they construct and develop is going to have to meet these new standards. But we wouldn't necessarily, in all cases, be able to require them to retroactively go back and modify the designs of their existing buildings that they are not touching. But that would be based on the level of expansion that they're doing and whether there is a nexus to require that at that time.
Because I just want to propose something about Commissioner Jones had brought up, as the city grows, we have these 6 storage facilities. There may be a need for, additional storage. And while I agree that, we need jobs and those don't have the best use to, create working facilities and stuff, we may need that, and it would be prudent to do it in the same areas that we already have, storage facilities. So I guess I wouldn't want them to all of a sudden have to pay $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 because of these new founded CUP requirements. At least for those 6, they should have a little bit more leniency in case we need growth. We can be in that area where where they already are, and it might probably provide the city with a little more flexibility. That's my first comment there. Second one is on the drive-through issue. So as restaurants in general are not going to build freestanding, at least freestanding from scratch, sit-down restaurants because of the cost associated with it. So I understand we have these, CUPs, and we don't want a lot of drive-throughs because maybe we don't want a lot of fast food restaurants. Understand that, but it may come to a point in time when there are no people willing to develop that land. I think that was even written in the staff report there somewhere. So I guess my question is, everybody who wants a drive-through, like a new fast food restaurant wants to put in a drive-through, has to come before the planning commission, and we do have the discretion of giving a CUP or not giving a CUP. I just want to make sure there's flexibility so that we don't end up mixing everything, which causes a problem as well. So.
Before we get into doing motions, I have a question. I don't know if this is for Eric or for Christy. This is an advisory. So if we wanted to propose alternative language, do we need to rewrite the resolution, or can we pass it but with additions saying we would want to change this or that, or how would that work?
That would work for me. I want to make sure that Jennifer and Eric have the feedback from the commission, in a good form. And I'd probably defer to Jennifer to have her kind of summarize the feedback and indicate that you would want to adopt the resolution and have provided that feedback for council for their consideration. If there's something very specific, I would not adopt this resolution, with this particular strikeout. You could give that to Jennifer, but otherwise a general overview of your feedback is totally fine, and you can adopt the resolution with direction to staff to provide your feedback to the council.
All right. Okay. So with that, I've heard some discussion. I definitely heard mine about increasing the residential setback, striking, and we'll talk about all of this. I'm just making a list for us to chat about. Striking the masonry wall exception. Finding an objective alternative to deemed appropriate, or maybe some additional wording to make it. I don't know. I would like to clarify that walls are walls, but that's actually in the commercial design document. So I don't think that we have that in front of us tonight. So those would be 3 changes that I would suggest, and other changes that were discussed. Did you have any?
So thank you for putting the 100-foot, that was on there, correct?
It's 100-foot right now.
Right, and we're looking to potentially
That was my
amend that.
suggestion.
Okay, great, thank you. And then Commissioner Johnson, I know you brought up about the existing storage facilities having some additional flexibility
to add if need be, so that we can keep it contained in those areas if we had additional growth.
And I bring that up too only because, again, I'm mixed because I 100% agree with Chair Floor on the job component, the economic component, but I also want to be careful that we have residents that need storage and then ultimately don't have it anymore because we've run out, being the city getting a little bit bigger, right? So I think that flexibility component might just be something to consider within the existing 6 so that there's at least something, that allows for the, potential if residents potentially need it.
Okay, so I have 4 items so far.
And just to add to that, we want to make sure that when we put that in writing of some kind, that we are making clear that because it's subjective, right? And so I want to make sure that when we say we're going to add on to existing establishments, that they're given the flexibility. And I'm not sure that we want to just leave it as existing flexibility, because someone can come behind and say, well, what did they mean by flexibility? So let's be real specific about what is flexibility. Is it 100 feet? Is it 1,000 feet? Are we going to look at it for a container space, additional storage space, additional 10 units? We got to be real specific, because someone can come in behind us and say, well, it's subjective and we're only going to give them 100 feet. And that will not be what I don't think the commission is trying to say up here.
I guess I'd be specific as I can. They own a certain plot of land, right? And then we have certain rules about setbacks. We have rules about how far you can go a buttress against, your property line. So as long as they were meeting all the current rules, buttressing, against their property line, their setbacks, and I don't even know, like, for example, how much they're actually taking up of their total property, because that's not necessarily in here. My only concern is that as we grow, we may need additional space. And I don't necessarily want another self-storage unit, but at least those folks could, at least build within their property line.
Can I interject with a question for Commissioner Johnson? Where in the development standards for the storage do you not see flexibility? I mean, which item, is it in?
Hold on, I'll get to the right spot here.
Okay.
It's not that I don't see it, it's that if they were to submit to, at least that's what I was asking Jennifer, excuse me, if they were to submit to build, then everything that the rules coming in now would come into play, and then they may have to update the whole facility.
Oh,
which would then make it prohibitive, or may make it prohibitive to expand that piece of property.
Oh, because they were built outside of these rules, and then if they want to expand,
exactly,
then all of a sudden they would have to comply. I understand what you're saying.
Because Jennifer clearly said that if it's a small piece to the parcel, they might not need to go through a whole redo. But that's where the being subjective comes in, because what is a small piece compared to building out the rest of their land? And if they build out the rest of their land, it could be substantial. I don't think so, but just hear me out. Then they might be charged to have to comply to these new set of rules for their entire facility, and that can be real cost prohibitive.
And then they wouldn't do it, and then we wouldn't get the benefit of getting the additional storage if we so choose. And all I'm talking about is the specific properties that, those 6. I'm not talking about anything else. I'm just talking about those 6. And if they would like to build out, in case we do need that, it might be beneficial for the city to keep the additional storage in those 6.
Oh, I agree. So again, it comes back to being real clear and as clear as we can without knowing the lot size of these 6 facilities. And I don't know what the terminology might be best used here to say that they are more than welcome to build out everything that is on their property without having to succumb to this new set of guidelines.
Okay, well, let's envision some scenarios. I'll start with like probably the worst one first was when we were talking about if they wanted to expand to 2 floors, that's kind of not what they already had. So I would think that in those kind of situations, or if they're going to tear it down and rebuild it, that probably isn't what you're looking for. You're looking more for like if they just want to expand.
Me personally, I'm looking for those 6, just those 6, as long as it doesn't violate, let's say, going to 3 stories or anything that we wouldn't do now. Like right now, my understanding is we couldn't go to 3 stories. So don't want to do 3 stories, don't want to. But if we contain the self-storage in the 6 locations where they are, I shouldn't you really use the word contain, because there are some there are some, I'm not trying to use the word contain, but it would make it potentially better for the city if they're in the areas where they are now than to say a new place come in or something different. That's all I'm trying to get to. Now, if they want to buy an additional parcel next door to where they are, I take my stuff back. I'm just talking about on their current land.
Okay, we just need some language.
If I could interject, I think what I think, if I'm hearing you correct, is what you're getting at is, and this is one where I think I would hope that you would give kind of staff some leeway in crafting language to present to council, but something along the lines, if I'm understanding correctly, is that if an existing facility were to remove, replace, or remodel more than 50% of their existing square footage, then they would need to abide by all new regulations. If they were adding an addition that is less than 50% of their existing square footage, that only the existing, or that only the new portion of the development would have to follow this, and the remaining existing portion would not. We would need to look into the percentage-wise and nexus type information to present to council on what would be appropriate and what we could actually support. But I think that's you're getting at is that there is some kind of cutoff that if you're less than a certain percentage of square footage, then only the new portion would be required, and you're not required to remodel the entire facility. Okay, I think staff understands if that's the direction that you choose to go.
Sorry, been trying to chime in here a little bit. I just flipped through all the PDs, all the PDs that are impacted here. And what I found was that almost all of them show the existing facilities, all 6, sort of landlocked, if you will. So the plausibility of those 6 facilities, like physically expanding, looks pretty unlikely. So to me, at least, from a practical standpoint, and the only other one is here is to look at the industrial commercial area, which there's still a fair amount in and around Brentwood. So that would probably be the more likely point to which a new facility would go in, therefore governed by these rules. So what I might offer to the commission is that we might consider more heavily focusing on inner development. So like if they wanted to build up, or if they wanted to like expand their density within their existing plot, because that's probably more likely given the expansion. So if it's an intermediate expansion versus I'll call it a gross expansion, which would be a full new lot or a full new facility. Sorry, I was clicking through the regulations as well, and I know that we specifically call out to Chair Flora's point about what was it? we talked about the as deemed by the community. There's things that we put in the architectural standards under the development standards 17.755.002. When you get to like item D, it says they shall comply with the following design standards. Well, there's a ton of design standards that are actually in the commercial design line guidelines. So when we talked about a lot of these things associated with the, well, in particular, the drive-through permitting, the drive-through design, we talk about the 100-foot rule or the proposal of this 100-foot from adjacent residential facilities. In the commercial design standards, it also says that you can't have, they strongly recommend to not have drive-through lanes located between the actual building and the street. So, I hate to point the finger at the most recent Wendy's approval, but that has exactly that, where it, it may be, I don't remember how far it is exactly from the edge of that drive-through to that house on the corner adjacent to Sand Creek. But if you had that as part of the design, if you had that drive-through going the other way, you're adding, and regardless of how far it is from the actual residential complex or housing development, you would have the building as being a physical barrier of sound mitigation. So in a way, by putting it on the other side or away from the street, away from any more built-up residential areas, it's sort of already baked into the commercial design standards. So I think in tandem between those two things, as long as whatever governing body acknowledges that both of those items are as critical as the other one, and on their own, they're kind of useless, but they need to be kind of held in the same vein in order to be effective. So that's how I interpret this. And then the other bit was about the walls. It's like we want walls that are not blank, particularly to be facing the street. We don't want that. We can have trellises, we can have gardening, vines and things like that, just ironically enough, what we see in the DSP as well. That's all in the commercial design standards as well. So this is all a lot of the stuff that we've got already. I think it's just a matter of getting the attention of the body that is reviewing the item. But I'm still not sure, and maybe Jennifer, you can help clarify from my perspective, is that when I look at when we call out those specific items in the municipal code, how does that differ from the reference to the documents like the commercial design standards?
So right now, the commercial design standards are our design portion of our code, our design review section in municipal code, refers to the design guidelines and indicates that projects should abide by them. And so in that case, it is not required, because they should, but they don't have to. What this does is it strengthens that a bit to indicate that for these specific uses, they shall. So if there is a clear and objective guideline within those, the new developments shall abide by it.
Okay, that was my understanding as well. So just to maybe the recommendation that I have based off of my rambling at this point is that we do a cursory review of the commercial design standards and extract things that we think are most applicable to not only the self-storage, but to the drive-through uses, and place them and have them as line items in the BMC. That way they are a shall, it's like you have to do this and it's not up to interpretation. That to me would give strength to those items that are going to maintain that consistency, or whether if we want to have some kind of growth amenability, depending on what that is. It's like if we want something that supports growth, have that in the commercial design standards, because it's a little bit more flexible in terms of what we choose to abide by versus not. Whereas in the BMC specifically, that is a hard, you shall apply that particular standard. So I offer that. I've called out a few things specifically in the commercial design standards. I don't know if there's any other ideas there, but I would certainly invite it for further discussion.
I just want to interject here again. On page 8, number 17, plan drive-through windows to minimize adverse physical and visual impacts. There's 3 items, A, B, and C. A and B are avoid, and in terms of what Vice Chair Brand was saying, I think these should be shalls. Item C actually says drive-through windows and driveways are not allowed in locations facing any residential area, including residential areas separated from the use by an intervening street. And I wasn't sure that the draft resolution adequately addressed that they just cannot be. So like item K, the ordering board should be isn't shall be, should is should. Whereas like in J, you use the word shall be, but in K, you use should be. I would say in K, it definitely needs to be shall be. So this is like on page 24 of 24 in the resolution. So definitely the ordering board shall be oriented and directed. So that would be something we could change. And again, drive-through windows and driveways are not allowed in locations facing any residential area, so they cannot be facing residential. But in the design document, it says avoid drive-through lanes which are located between the building. And I would say we should have language in the municipal code that says drive-through lanes shall not be located between the building and adjacent streets. Drive-through exits shall not exit into major entry. Is that sort of what you're thinking? So I would like to see that. So I'll add that as an item here, because we kind of took it away from the discussion we were having about Commissioner Johnson's item, which was the storage. So add shall nots.
Chair Floor, so you mean item 17, I believe that's on the actual page 12 of the commercial design standards in the document on the Brentwood homepage, but
yeah, it's I actually have it as page 13, but it's labeled page 8.
Yeah, it's labeled page 8, but yeah.
So anyway.
We're on this page 12.
So if I'm hearing you right, it's like adding those 3 items as being part of, so A, B, and C under line item 17. Because I think this is the only section that specifically addresses drive-through uses with relation to, I'll call it circulation design, for lack of a better phrase. There's a bunch of other stuff that might impact it from a cosmetic design standpoint, but this is these 3 line items do address the actual, I think, circulation concerns with respect to adjacency to residential, as well as potential noise mitigation, whether it be active or passive.
Right, so now we have 3 suggestions for the drive-through. And deemed appropriate. And then deemed appropriate, this is storage. This is drive-through.
And it does look like there's no specific mention of storage related in a similar way that the drive-through is mentioned in the commercial design standards. But because it's specifically called out, I think it's deemed appropriate that we integrate those as shall in the BMC versus not.
Yeah, I did find a should just now that I didn't really care for, which is on K, there's a should, so we should, and on I, there's a should. And the setback is a shall be, this is a shall. That's a shall. Yeah, it's just, I think, I said K is a should and I.
I'm just trying to.
Okay, but before we, did we get, I would like to circle just want to get back to the flexibility. Do we have language that, Commissioner Johnson, the language that was suggested to you, is that what you want to see?
So and this is just, so we have the planning staff, and just, my background, I used to build, we used to build these things, and property, the property configuration sometimes, as we know, the odd-shaped lots can sometimes determine the way the building is facing and where the drive-through is, and, the ease of access.
No, I was trying to ask you about the flexibility around storage.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to know if the language
Yeah,
that Jennifer offered
yes,
you
that was good.
is good? So you're good with that?
I'm
Okay.
good with that.
All right, now you want to go back to that? Okay.
Right. So that my only concern is, we just have to, I think that the commission needs to make sure that sometimes when we put these shalls, these hard and fast rules about the way the drive-through is going to go, it's all great when the property lines are, a nice square lot, or it's perfectly fitting. And then, yeah, you can put a building matching everything the way we want it to match. But if you have an odd-shaped lot, or, for example, an odd-shaped lot in the main traffic where you would drive into the drive-through or drive into the lot is on a side where you don't expect it to be, it forces the, whoever the company is that's building, to build a different looking building, if they're going to build it at all. So my only thing is that we be careful about the shoulds and the shalls. They can always come before the planning commission. They can, and we can all look at it and say, no, for example, no, it doesn't work. But when we say shall not, we're gonna make sure that they don't even try. And that's the only thing I would caution us against.
Yeah.
Sure.
The only challenge I would say to that, I agree with what you're saying in respect to being mindful of that word, but when I look at particularly things like drive-through and the setback and having 100 feet, I would never want to have any real leverage behind adjusting those things. If it's just because the property line's different, we have to move the speaker facing the home. Like, we can't do that, right? So I think that's what you mean, but I wanted to be sure.
No, I don't want the speaker to face the home either. What I'm saying is, I don't know what's coming.
Right.
But I don't know what's coming, right? We can have recommendations in there. None of us know exactly what's going to come before you and what's going to happen. So the only thing I'm saying is that it might be that you let them come before the planning commission, and if the case justifies it, they get the CUP. If it doesn't, they don't. That's all I'm saying. I don't want, if somebody came and, they were 50 feet away and they wanted to have a speaker, I would be the first one going, no, right? We don't want that. But that would be my only piece of advice.
My concern with that line of reasoning is that in the past, I have seen documents come through here that clearly said should, and there was a clear intent, and yet some commissioners would be very liberal in their interpretation and allow something that was not the intent. And this is why I prefer objectivity in all things. So if you're saying that it's too tight, then that an exception should be possible, I would need to have some way to understand under exactly what conditions an exception would be possible. So can you clarify that for me?
That's not what I'm saying. I guess I know we wanted to make sure there was a wall. I'm just going to give you an example. Like, we want to make sure that the drive-through, there's a wall between it and you can't see it from the street. Okay, I'm just using that as an example. There may be a case where, because of where the main traffic is and the size of the lot, the drive-through has to be seen from the street. That's where there may not, I'm just saying there may be a case, or that the wall. I don't know. That's the problem. I don't know. If I knew the exact example, or if I could draw it out, I would tell you. What I'm just saying is, all I'm suggesting is that we take into consideration that these people have to come before the Planning Commission. They do have a city staff, and we put the words in there. And if they come before the city staff and they think it's okay, or maybe they don't, or they come before the Planning Commission, and maybe there are some liberal, people that don't agree necessarily with what you thought, but the majority does, then it doesn't happen, or it does. I don't know. It's
well
to have a little bit.
I just stand by my point that if you say should, and a lot of people will just read that as, oh, they can do it. If you say they don't have, if you say should, they'll say, oh, they don't have to do it. They shall do it, then they have to do it. In the hypotheticals that you posed, what that suggests to me is that maybe that's not the best site for a drive-through. So, and I think that there is some process for variances in this city. I don't know if we put a shall, would a variance still be possible?
If it's shall, then it would be strictly prohibited. It would require a variance, and typically a variance would have to be something, there's specific variance findings. I'd even have to look at our variance provisions to see if something like this would even be allowed under a variance section, which I don't know off the top of my head, but typically variance findings are that there's something unique about the property, which is often very difficult to make those findings. So,
yeah,
I don't know specifically if a variance is the correct route or if it would even be available, but typically if you say it shall not, or shall, then if it doesn't meet that requirement, it's not able to be applied for.
So it just would make it difficult but not impossible, which is kind of what I like. So, because if we're gonna plan, let's plan. I'm sorry, I'm hogging. Anybody else, Chris? Sorry, Vice Chair Brand.
Yeah, and I think we've kind of gotten to what Commissioner Johnson was commenting on. It sounds like that having to submit for a variance would be an active deterrent to the development of drive-throughs. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to clarify, just so everyone understands. Yeah.
Anyone else want to jump in on this one?
I have a summary that I've created if you want to share my screen, and we can maybe go through this if somebody would like to make a motion.
I don't really sense the commission coming together on certain items, but I think it would be instructive to put it up and then we can kind of dissect it. If ever, is that okay?
Okay. So I'll zoom in first just on the drive-through section. So from what I understand is for the drive-through section would be for section F to increase the residential setback and remove the unless separated by the masonry wall provision. And an I and K, potentially change it from should to shall. And then in regards to the current design guidelines, make number 17 on page 8 objective and add directly into sections, somewhere into the drive-through section. And then right below that is cut and paste of what that 17 page 8 is. And those were my 3 notes that I have for that section.
And these are just the drive-through sections?
Yeah.
All right, and do you have a similar workup for the storage?
So for storage, I have on number 5 to remove the subjective language surrounding the deemed appropriate. For number 6, define a wall or refer back to the design standards for the section of defining what a wall is. And then consider non-conforming nexus related to new square footage, potentially consider related to including a percentage removed, renovated, remodeled square footage to kick in renovation to the rest of the site.
So I think that's everything that I had written down. Where we're removing deemed appropriate, I want to go back and look at that. I'll pull it back up on my screen.
I think that was in reference to the discretion of the community development director with respect to, that's what I recall
Yeah.
in the staff
Well,
report.
It's just that I wanted to strengthen that so that it's more than deemed appropriate. It has to meet the criteria that it does screen. You know what I mean?
Correct.
Okay. And
well, actually, now that I think about it, sorry to interject again. When it says through the building design, decorative walls, landscaping, that would be through the purview of the planning commission or city council, depending on, because that design review for a new facility, at least, or a heavily remodeled one, that design would come to us. So, in a way, it's, the initial work would probably happen with the community development director, but then ultimate approval would come through a body like ours. I think. I mean, is that a fair assessment?
There is one of the PDs where it does not require a conditional use permit, where it is allowed. And so we could redo it to say by the community development director, or planning commission, something like that. Or we could just leave it as deemed appropriate.
To compensate for the by right use of I think it's the acorn storage, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Storage units shall be fully screened from the public right of way through building design, decorative walls, landscaping, or other, I don't know, effective screening methods. I don't want the community development director deeming something appropriate that doesn't fully screen.
Yeah, maybe I'm not looking into it far enough on that. But I mean, deemed appropriate to me, it's pretty clear. I mean, essentially, you're saying it's appropriate.
You're new here.
It's meeting it, right? So I mean, I think that's just my thought on it. But I mean, I'm open to hearing more.
Yeah, again, deemed appropriate means the community development can deem it any way they want, and I want it to be sure that it is fully screened.
Chair Floor, maybe a suggestion here is that you're talking item 5 under category D of the development standards for, if we can get a bit more objective in terms of the BMC addressing what the definition of we'll call it a fully screened wall, and that way it becomes an objective definition. And then at that point, if it meets or doesn't meet that, the community development director would be assessing that on a more objective standard versus that or that simply gets lifted and put into the, or no, this is already proposed. So, but yeah, just being a bit more specific on the actual definition. And
Well,
if there isn't one that exists, we just create one and then propose it to council.
Yeah, I'm kind of waffling now. It does say it shall be fully screened, so hopefully,
We could just remove everything after or other screening methods, period.
I would like that better if
Yeah, I was just going to note for the commission, just in terms of interpretation of your own code, I would say that section was written to state that storage units must be fully screened, right? They shall be fully screened, and the as deemed appropriate relates back to the other screening methods. So you wouldn't necessarily need to use those 4 first ones listed: building design, decorative walls, landscaping. You could use something else that was appropriate. It relates to that, not the actual screening itself, which actually must be done.
All right, well, in that case, I would probably leave the community development director into it, because then that person would at least, if some other method was proposed, that person would be in a position to see that other method. So I'll withdraw that if
And also
everybody's okay.
too, remember, we can always appeal a decision made by the community development director and have it reviewed here. So
Right,
if there was a.
but we is not the five of us. We is whoever sits here at the time the application comes through. And again, that's the hell of legislating, right? All right, so I'm sorry. I'll take that one back. So I'll go back to see what we've got.
Did we miss anything else as far as the content on the, that's being projected right now? Otherwise, I'd say we should proceed with the motion.
Yeah, and again, we can take 5 off of there. And the only other thing is, can I see the, can I see the definition on consider non-conforming? Consider non-conforming nexus. Is city council going to understand what we mean by consider non-conforming nexus?
And we'll go into more detail on what that would mean as part of the staff report. This is just for notes and for the motion.
Notes. Okay. All right, I don't have any more comments on that. Does anybody else? Are we ready for a motion? I'll hear a motion.
Yeah, I make a motion to adopt resolution number 25-010 with the presently amended recommendations on screen for both drive-through and self-storage uses, recommending that the City Council adopt ordinance to amend the Brentwood Municipal Code to add development standards for self-storage facilities in Chapter 17.755, add development standards for drive-through facilities in Chapter 17.655, add new land use classifications for each in Section 17.030.030, and update references in all zones throughout the city related to the uses.
You want to add, did you mention about the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I get a second?
Before there's a second, if I may, the on-screen verbiage, is that appropriate for the second to, I know Vice Chair Brand used the verbiage on-screen, is just, he's assuming to this, obviously, but I want to make sure we're clear on what that is.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. If you want to include the what we're looking at on screen that Jennifer's prepared for us tonight, we'll include those in your motion.
And I know that's what you meant. I know
that.
that's what you meant, but I just, for the record, yeah, I wanted to make sure it was clear, so, okay. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Okay. That was our public hearing. Moving on to business items. F1, review of the 2025-26 to 2029-30 capital improvement program, the CIP, for consistency with the general plan. Eric?
Thank you. Good evening, Chairperson, floor, members of the commission. I have a brief presentation. This is an annual item that the commission is required to review for general plan conformance related to the CIP, and it's the capital improvement program. It's a 5-year program of related improvements, and our finance department is in charge of really creating the document, but it has input from a variety of departments. So I'm just here tonight to bring it to the commission for conformance. As you can see, I'm flying solo in terms of staff backup. So to the extent that the commission has any specific questions about projects, I'll do my best to answer those. But essentially, just to summarize real quick, the general plan lays out certain major objectives that directly relate to the preparation of the CIP, which are as follows. Update the CIP to include as appropriate roadway improvements necessary to support build out of the general plan. That's an action item in the general plan circulation element. Also to include capital projects that are sponsored by the city necessary to maintain and improve traffic operations in the 5-year CIP. That's in the circulation element. And then During the annual preparation of the CIP, review the conditions of bridges, culverts, and other flood control and stormwater conveyance infrastructure. That's from the safety element. So there's really three primary purposes of the CIP. One is to integrate capital improvements with other activities, such as implementation of the general plan. Also to ensure that planning for capital improvements is tied to realistic, predictable sources of income to finance those improvements. And then third, to define desired improvements and anticipated construction schedules so there's adequate time for planning, design, and public review prior to construction. As you probably already know and noticed as you reviewed the CIP in draft form, it's organized into what are called categories. There's 7 of them. So there's roadway improvements, parks and trails improvements, water improvements, wastewater improvements, community facilities improvements, future improvements, and those are ones that are currently not funded. And then last but not least, development improvements. And those are ones that are basically being done in conjunction with a specific, a specific development project. So as I mentioned, this is a 5-year program that looks ahead based on the coming fiscal year. So this one is for 2025-2026, which starts on July 1st, rolls into the end of June next year. It looks ahead for the following 4 years. But staff is constantly updating it and bringing it to the council for formal adoption, which we're hoping to do at the June 24th meeting. So this is a critical meeting to make sure that the Planning Commission is on board with general plan conformance. And I will say too that each project sheet within the CIP itself has a listing of how that particular project conforms to or complies with the general plan, referencing specific goals, actions, or policies. So hopefully that was helpful for the commission. And then I'll just conclude by stating that the staff's recommendation, is to adopt a resolution recommending that this document is consistent with the general plan. And then again, it'll be forwarded to the council for formal adoption of the CIP at the end of June. So with that, I'll turn it back to the commission for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any clarifying questions of staff? No? All right. Okay. At this time, the public is permitted to address the Planning Commission. Remarks are limited to 5 minutes per person. Again, no applicant. So we'll move right into public speakers. April?
Chair, we have no speaker cards for those here in person. We'll go to Zoom. If you'd like to speak on this item, please raise your hand. We have no hands raised.
Thank you. I will now close public comment. And is there any discussion by the commission? Commissioner Roberts, since I skipped you last time.
No, Commissioner Roberts has none.
Commissioner Jones?
None at this time, thank you.
A couple things I wanted to discuss. The countywide smart signal CIP. I know the reference to improve circulation in locations with highest levels of congestion. The selection of intersections, is that clear as of right now? What, because this is a grant. Eric, I'm not sure if you know, but if there's predetermined intersections that are at the top of the list in terms of improvement, I didn't see that in the item, but.
Yeah, I'm going to the page right now. So countywide smart signals.
Yeah.
If it's not listed in either like the description or justification below the graphics at the top of the page or under the supplemental, my guess would be no. But I can also check in with engineering staff subsequent to tonight's meeting and see, and then just forward the information onto the commission as an FYI.
Yeah, it says 15 intersections total. And I know at least on the big picture in terms of the roadway improvements, there's a call out like halfway between O'Hara and Brentwood Boulevard, but that was the only one that I could find. Just to ensure that whatever reasoning that went behind to suffice general plan policy CIR 1-7, that it's just aligned with that. That was my only comment on that one. Let's see, the Lone Tree Way roadway improvements, I believe phase 1 is complete. Phase 2 I had had some comments about this, I think, last year in terms of multimodal transportation throughout that region, adding the sidewalks, adding the some of those extensive ways, despite the fact there's a lack of other development happening there. Just for the resident feedback, is there any schedule for the Phase 2 completion? I know that includes a signal at Lone Tree Way and Smith Road, as well as a potential signal at O'Hara and O'Hara. It's a small lane there that only goes about 50 feet, but that's more informational, I guess, as a question.
Yeah, I'd probably have to follow up with the commission on that one as well, because I only see that under supplemental information, it references that Phase 2 is for the undergrounding of the overhead utilities,
Yes.
which was estimated to begin in January of 2025. Yeah.
Yeah, and that includes this. I get a lot of complaints in my neighborhood about this, so I'm bringing it up. There's a electrical pole that is basically in the center of the road at the intersection of Smith and Big Basin. It would free up a second lane for school traffic through there, and that's part of this CIP. So just as far as implementation goes, I'm curious as far as both the timeline as well as its integration within Phase 2. What type of, is PG&E involved in that sort of discussion? You might not have this information. I bring it up. I want to make sure it's out in the public.
Oh, and it's not, might not, I don't.
Okay.
But I do understand the question, and I'll do what I can afterwards to, just as an FYI, provide it to the commission.
Okay. 3 more, sorry. Wastewater treatment plant expansion for Phase 2. How are we defining the definition of future development, as well as is that associated with what we would project as being our build-out capacity for Brentwood, for population and residential, infrastructure development? Just to...
Yeah, I'm trying to get to the project page. Wastewater treatment plant expansion, you said? Oh, Phase 2?
Yeah, Phase 2.
And where is the language you're referring to?
Sorry, let me find it here. Talk about a lot of wastewater here. Sorry, just a moment. Is that what it's called? I think it's the treatment plant expansion Phase 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm reading through it right now. I'm just trying to find what you were...
Oh, yeah, and then it says, so treatment facility was planned and constructed to accommodate future expansions. Includes a fiscal year. Sorry, I missed that bit. My understanding, at least, of the treatment plant expansion is that...
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Under description/justification, which is right under the graphics.
Yeah, the final build-out population per the current general plan.
Right.
And accommodate planned and approved development of the city.
Yeah, so that when the general plan was updated in 2014, there was a population build-out estimate. We had to do that for environmental impact purposes.
Yeah.
So I think that's what that's saying on this sheet is the future expansion of this is tied to the build-out of the general plan.
Okay, and it's tied to that 2014 calculation?
Right.
Okay, got it. The downtown Wi-Fi project, in terms of its coordination with the general plan, I'm kind of lost in terms of its alignment with it, only because this was kicked off in 2012. Our capability for cell infrastructure has grown exponentially, and I would just kind of question its relevance in today's standard, whereas, most LTE or 5G can give you faster speeds than you can over Wi-Fi. So I might submit that as a possibility as far as why. It's not very, I think it's only like $10,000, but just a question there. And then fleet electrification, just a broad question as far as the federal government had recently ruled in the Senate that they can overturn their 2035 mandate. I don't know if there was any change in terms of our direction based off of that recent vote, I guess you could say, or if we're just kind of holding steadfast with the original intent to maintain that from a California legislative. I don't want to get too into but just a question.
Yeah, and actually, if you wouldn't mind, can you go back just real quick to your question on it's downtown public Wi-Fi upgrade? What exactly was your question on that one? Because I don't.
Just the fact that I don't think it really applies anymore to the current general plan policies, only because even if with revised infrastructure, we don't have, even with our most busy events like a Oktoberfest or a large event, we have sufficient cell tower throughput to suffice data, calls, that sort of thing. And just as a general expense, I'm not sure. It's more of an open for discussion topic kind of thing for this body, as well as when it goes to council.
Okay. Yeah, and again, I don't really have any information for you tonight on that one.
Would it be possible for further context to be provided to council when it goes back to them, just in terms of how the revision, like how this money is being spent potentially, as well as how it directly applies to the general plan in 2025 versus 2014? From a technology standpoint, maybe that's a better way of describing it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I understand your question. I really deferred to the staff and the other departments in terms of the policies that were identified for conformance, but maybe in the resolution that gets adopted, we can add some language to that effect. I wouldn't necessarily feel too comfortable with anything related to funding per se, since that's solely under the council's purview. And Christy, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, or if you have other thoughts, but that's what I would do at this point on that one.
Yeah, and I just would chime in to say, tonight the Planning Commission's action, proposed action, is to determine conformity of the capital improvement program to the general plan. There's not going to be an exact policy in the general plan for every single project, but there are going to be overarching general plan policies that should cover, that staff is recommending cover these kinds of groups of projects. And so your action tonight is just to determine the conformity. As these projects come forward, the council will consider them on an individual basis in terms of funding and that kind of stuff as they come forward. But the commission's purview is limited to this state law required conformity determination. And so that's this evening's job. And then if I'm understanding correctly, Commissioner Brandon, forgive me if I'm not, you just had a question about the specific policy that these wireless projects that require these wireless projects in the general plan, or are you indicating that you don't think these wireless projects are consistent with the general plan?
I'm suggesting that there's lack of specificity in terms of what technologies are being implemented as far as Wi-Fi goes, and that would be from my perspective, would weigh heavily in terms of how that technology suffices the general plan needs listed here. That's all. It's just because it says Wi-Fi upgrade, but I don't know what that means. Typically, we would, they'd get a little bit more specific versus, like the wastewater treatment stuff, they're very specific about, it's going to cost this much, and it has, this amount of, it's got to clear this amount of water, that sort of thing. I'm just not seeing that degree of specificity with this particular item, that's all.
Yeah, and one other thing, I didn't mention this earlier, and I can't remember the exact date, but I know that this document, it's kind of interesting from a staff perspective, because once the council adopts it every year, it's usually like in May or June. It's not that long afterwards that staff from the finance department says, okay, it's time to get ready for next year's CIP. So it's literally like an annual thing that you'd look at constantly, right? But there was a workshop with the council, I want to say, again, I don't have the exact date, but it was last month in May, where they basically had an opportunity to review everything and ask questions. I wasn't at that meeting, but this document basically reflects, at least in part, the discussion that took place at that meeting. So again, I think I understand your question, but my understanding is that, like this one in particular, they didn't have any concerns or issues with because it's still in the draft.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I guess just for the commission's perspective, from my logical standpoint, it's as if, we had some miraculous leap in capability, and we were still talking about, oh, we need to have our roads that suffice horse-drawn buggy traffic versus that of vehicular traffic, right? We're in a kind of similar space here where it's like, oh, well, we have other technologies that might better support our residents and be, substantially cheaper. Anyway, thank you very much for that context.
Sure.
I imagine you don't have a comment about the fleet electrification, because if it seems kind of questionable.
I really don't, but if you wouldn't mind just repeating that real quick, I'll add it to my list of notes, and then again, I can follow up with the commission on a comprehensive basis.
Cal Matters had an article about it, just the fact that the Senate had voted on something with respect, and there's a big battle right now to, whether or not that's constitutional, or I'm not getting into that, but just the fact that it has happened and that some type of federal mandate could be that a California mandate could be overturned, therefore relieving Brentwood of a potential additional expense. Maybe that's the best way of saying it from my perspective.
Okay. So, and I don't know if other commissioners have questions or comments, but to the extent that would be it. Again, I'll do my best to summarize those with some follow-up information, but probably won't be till next week, but I'll send the commission an email, and then if you have further questions after you see that, please let me know.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Anybody else? No? Okay. As for myself, I didn't find any problems with conformity. I guess since we mentioned Wi-Fi, I'll mention this is free Wi-Fi. And as fast as my cell phone is, the first time I go to a hotel room, I try to get on the hotel's Wi-Fi. So I think there's still probably a benefit, but we're not discussing the benefit today. And as far as the things going on in Congress right now, they're not finalized yet. And so we would have to wait for them to finalize that. And then the general plan might need to be modified. And then we could determine whether there was conformity. But the general plan that we see today is the same general plan we had, 5 months ago. So if it was conformant, then it's conformant now. I did want to just say that what I did really appreciate about this item that came before us today is, as people like to know sometimes, and I see comments, what is the city spending all their money on? And capital projects are very usually high visibility. These are when you think, oh, is somebody doing something? Investing in the capital improvements is doing something. So I would love it if the public would go and look at the capital improvement program from time to time. And it's just page after page after page of all the improvements that are going on. And some of them pretty exciting, the new soccer fields and things. So that's out there for it. And I would encourage the public to look at that. Having said all that, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to adopt resolution number 25-010, recommending that the city council adopt ordinance to amend the Brentwood
Through
municipal.
the chair, that's
Wrong one.
the previous motion.
Oh, sorry. Why did I miss that?
Page 3, middle of the page.
Looking, there we go. I make a motion to adopt resolution number 250-011, finding that the city's 2025-26-2029-30 capital improvement program is consistent with the general plan.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Moving on to informational reports from committees and upcoming schedule. So we're doing something a little different this time. We're letting people discuss, well, actually, this one looks a little different, but commissioners can also discuss events that they've attended and anything else they'd like to talk about. Transplant Committee, Commissioner, Vice Chair Brand?
Yeah, nothing substantial in terms of updates about East County transportation projects. Last May 15th was Bike to Work Day. Transplant did a big thing about that. And the budget discussion for this fiscal year shows no significant deviations from the previous year. There's minimal staff and such associated, so not too much to report.
Design review?
We didn't meet.
Have not met.
Land Use and Development Committee, that's me. I think I reported last time that the LUD Committee, Land Use and Development, we call it LUD up here, had met and we had discussed had taken a first discussion of the objective design standards for residential, which is a requirement by the state that we have objective designs. We can only judge residential projects by objective designs due to some new laws. And we'll be meeting probably again on the 16th, which would be the next scheduled date. We're given the design, and given a month to go through it. It's quite thick. I have it actually right here. Not super thick, but there's a lot. And we'll be discussing that, and I'd encourage the public to tune in. And finally, the Brentwood Municipal Code Review Committee.
We still haven't met this year, hopefully soon.
All right. Moving on. Requests for future agenda items. Do we have any future agenda item requests?
I don't have any.
Seeing
None for me, thank you.
Okay, seeing none. The next regular Planning Commission meeting is scheduled for June 17th, 2025 at 7 p.m. and will be held here at the Council Chambers located at 150 City Park Way. I need one more motion.
All motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Yes, by all means. Yeah, it's not about